could read your thoughts. From the future.
The movies of 1985.
Hello. Welcome to the year 1985. It's week 42. That's Tuesday the 15th of October to Monday the 21st of October 1985. This is the podcast with the bingo machine. We select a movie at random by selecting a ball from a bingo machine that I'll do right now. Now I'm just thinking I'm going to have to turn on my Commodore 64 because it takes a while to boot up. So let me just get that going because I've got to look up the number, you see. So it's all sorts of craziness going on here. I should have got prepared earlier. And a ball is out, and we've got number 31 this week. Number 31, and looking that up on my spreadsheet, it is Better Off Dead. Better Off Dead, another movie from the United States. And it's that guy, isn't it? That John Cusack guy. So we've seen him in a movie or two already this year, and we're going to see him in Better Off Dead. So I'm going to head off to Star Video Rentals in Leaderville. They have a little John Cusack fan club over there, and I'll rent me this movie. I'll be back soon, but while I'm away, I'll flick on the TV, and you can watch Nad.
And for you, sir? What he'd really like is the type of pizza he has back home. You see, they're thicker and they're baked and served in the same deep dish. They're all golden brown on the outside and light and tasty on the inside.
Pizza Hut pan pizzas. A thicker style pizza baked and served in its own deep dish with your choice of toppings. Only at Pizza Hut.
Meravigliosa, bellissima, buonissima, deliziosa.
He says it's nice. He's welcome.
So, Better Off Dead. I've got the VHS cover in my hot little hand. The movie's loaded into the VCR. We're ready to watch it. I hope you're nice and comfortable there on the sofa. So this video cover is a bit insane, and I think it's because in later years they changed the cover image that they used. The one that I remember from later years is John Cusack with mirror shades on and sort of looking over the top of them. The original VHS cover from 1985 is a very weird illustration of a guy that kind of looks a little bit like John Cusack, but not quite. But he famously has the cotton wool buds or the Q-tips, as they would call them in America, up his nostrils and in his ears. That's the scene that I remember from this movie. I also remember the newspaper kid asking for his $2 or something, going down a ski slope, which we thought was hilarious when we were in our teens. But I remember very little about it. But the cover is a very odd hand illustration, and there's a red car. There's a couple of people talking to each other with handbags. I don't know why they're on there. There's some nuns running away. There's a lady cooking a big tentacled crab thing in her pot. I'm not sure what she's doing. There's a man and a woman dressed in Halloween garb, maybe. The woman looks like she's dressed as a reindeer. I'm not sure what's going on. There's a noose hanging down from the top, and then it says, John Cusack, when you're dumped by your girlfriend, attacked by your dinner, and bounced by the basketball team, you might well be better off dead. And the title is in red and yellow letters, using a font that's similar to the Goodies font, if you know what I mean. Now, turning over to the back, straight away, there's John Cusack crouching down on the ground, looking up at a woman on roller skates who's dressed in a bikini by the looks of it. There's a few other photographs that I can't really make out what it is, and a little blurb that says, when luckless Lane Mayer's girlfriend dumps him for the captain of the Glendale High School ski team, his imagination runs riot. His mother's a disaster in the kitchen, his kid brother's building killer laser guns in the bedroom, the paperboy's out to get him, and his father thinks he's paranoid. With everyone against him, Lane thinks he'd be far better off dead. That is until he goes head over heels for the foreign exchange student next door, John Cusack, star of The Sure Thing, The sure thing, of course, being that awful movie we saw earlier in the year, stars in this outrageous adventure comedy. So there you go. I hope you're sitting comfortably because it's time to press play on tape and watch Better Off Dead.
Does it ever feel like everyone's got more going than you do?
Oops.
That everyone is smart?
So you're Al Myers' kid.
Yes, I am.
You look pretty stupid to me.
Thank you.
You say the best skier in town just ran off with your girlfriend? Even your younger brother does better than you do? And that nobody even cares?
Beth broke up with me.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you might be right. But remember one thing.
I haven't even been to New York City.
Nobody was ever better off dead.
The truth is, I could outski you any day of the week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you want a race? I'll take you on any day, sucker.
Go that way, really fast. If something gets in your way, turn.
All you need is guts.
All right! Now turn!
I'm gonna race, I'm gonna lose, and I'm gonna die, in that order.
Go!
And you'll never doubt yourself again.
He's skiing on one ski!
Better off dead.
That's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good white boy like that.
An abnormal look at a normal teenager.
Well, this was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I had a hazy memory of watching it when I was 13 years old, most likely, or pretty soon after release. I remembered the newspaper boy chasing after him with the "I want my $2." And I remembered the Q-tips in the nose and ears, but apart from that, not very much. But this movie is kind of like an anti-Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller doesn't come out until 1986, and this is really similar in a way, but it's sort of the inverse Ferris Bueller. It's funny and absurdist, just ridiculously absurdist, with animation and all sorts of weird things happening. It's really exaggerated with lots of stereotypes taken to the extreme. If you look at the mum who can't cook, for example, they take that joke to the most extreme places. It's crazy. Anyway, let's look at the first 10 minutes. So we begin with a blue CBS Productions logo that is interrupted by this piercing scream that made me jump, and very 80s music. In fact, this is a very 80s movie. And we see some hand-drawn animation of a princess being kidnapped and a knight on horseback racing to save her. He falls and jumps into a croc-infested river, and then we fade to a teenaged boy's bedroom, and the boy in bed is obviously the knight in shining armor. He wakes up with a framed photograph of his girlfriend in the bed beside him, which he kisses. His whole bedroom is a shrine to this girl. And the radio clock, or the digital radio clock, beeps 8 a.m. and wakes him up. Now, his name is Lane. He's played by John Cusack. And he hops into the shower wearing odd socks on his feet as we crossfade to his parents asleep in bed. And the dad awakes when he hears an approaching BMX bike with playing cards in the spokes, to make it sound like a motorbike. And that's the paperboy approaching. We see all but one of the glass panes in the dad's garage door have been broken, and the dad quickly throws on his wife's clothing and pink slippers and races downstairs to open the garage door just in time to avoid the newspaper being thrown by the newspaper boy into the last glass pane. So that remains intact, and he yells out, "Ha, missed." And then, dressed in his wife's clothing and pink slippers, he turns around and he sees that stereotypical elderly neighbour clipping his hedges with some secateurs and, just seriously says, "Morning." And then to top it all off, of course, he lowers the garage door and the last pane of glass smashes because it lowers too quickly. We now cut back to Lane, John Cusack, in the bathroom upstairs, blow drying his hair and his socks. And then we go back to the kitchen where the wife is serving boiled bacon to her husband, because apparently he said fried bacon was too fatty, and this boiled bacon is all blue and slimy. So that's the wife who doesn't know how to cook. And then the geeky younger son named Badger is sitting at the breakfast table. He's clipped out all the competitions from all the cereal boxes. So when the dad's picking up a cereal box, it's empty, or there's cereal falling out of the hole where he's clipped out one of these competitions. We hear music coming from upstairs, and the dad says, "Why is Lane awake so early? Doesn't he turn to dust if the sun hits him before noon?" But the mum explains that he's going up the mountain with his girlfriend Beth for the ski tryouts, and that he is obsessed with her. We then cut back to Lane, who's entering his closet where all the coat hangers have Beth's face on them. And we get more visual gags and slapstick humour as Lane leaves the house with his skiing gear, knocking over vases and things like that. His dad confronts him and says, "What about that car that's sitting in our driveway covered up and you never drive it?" So that's something that comes back later on in the movie. But as he leaves the house to go skiing, the French exchange student Monique across the street watches him leave with a smile from her bedroom window. We then cut into that household to see the mum of the household introducing her overweight son Ricky to her. Ricky's a lot of fun in this movie. And then we cut to Lane stopped at a red light in a beaten up old car, obviously not the one that he'd bought and left in the driveway, which isn't in working condition at all. Anyway, he's in this beaten up old car, and two Japanese kids pull up alongside him to race him at the traffic lights when the traffic lights turn green. One of these Japanese kids starts commentating the whole thing like a wide world of sports host. He's got a microphone, like a CB radio microphone, and speakers on top of the car, and you hear all this commentary, and then as the lights turn green, they zoom off and Lane reverses into a truck. And then we get a bit of redneck road rage as this truck driver steps out of his truck and approaches Lane and says, "You stupid bonehead, I'm going to activate your dental plan," which I thought was quite funny. We then cut to Beth on her phone talking to a friend while looking at a framed photograph of Lane. And you think, oh, she's in love with him too. How sweet. But no, she's talking about dumping Lane to go out with Roy, who's the ski champion. And indeed, she replaces Lane's photograph with a photograph of Roy, a very blonde, toothy smile, like a jock kind of guy. And he's the best skier on the mountain, the only person able to ski the K12 run. And the K12 run in this movie is named after, of course, the whole school system, kindergarten through to year 12, because the idea is if you can beat that ski run, they don't actually say this in the movie, but you can figure it out. If you can beat this ski run, then you've basically grown up and you've beaten all of those demons that you have in high school. So there you go. So that is the first 10 minutes of the movie, and it is a really good introduction. We get the humour. We see every major character pretty much, apart from Lane's best friend, who we see only a few minutes afterward. That's Curtis Armstrong, who played Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. He plays Lane's best friend, Chuck, and his character is always looking for a drug hit, and he settles with snorting Jell-O in the school cafeteria, snorting actual snow on the top of the mountain. We also are introduced later on to the maths teacher, and this reminds me a bit like the anti-Ferris Bueller. You know, in Ferris Bueller, you've got the teachers, they're very boring and the kids don't want to be there. In this movie, the maths teacher is captivating and all of the students are top of the class. They are desperate to do their homework and to do well, all apart from Lane and Chuck, who are the two misfits. Anyway, the maths teacher is played by Vincent Schiavelli, who's a very well-known character actor known for his thin skeletal frame. He had something called Marfan syndrome that made him look like that. People will probably know him from the movie Ghost, where he played a ghost in the subway who jumped onto the trains. But he's in so many movies and TV shows. And so we've introduced almost all of the characters in a very short amount of time. We set up the story. We know that he's breaking up with his girlfriend. We know that he wants to ski the mountain and beat the K-12. And we know that he wants to beat these Japanese kids in a race at the green traffic light, presumably in the car that's lying on his dad's driveway. And we see the love interest, this French girl across the street. That's basically everything. We get it all in the 10 minutes. So it's very clever. It's very efficient. Like I said, there's a lot of stereotypes that they make fun of, and they're sort of made fun of in the extreme. So they're not really offensive in any way, but they sort of take them to comical, like caricatures, like this mum across the road that's trying to set up her overweight son with the French exchange student and things like that. We have the mum who can't cook. We have the dad who thinks that Lane is becoming a drug addict and tries to bond with him by using street language. Lane has all these crazy dream sequences that use stop motion and hand-drawn animation. We have this newspaper boy, Johnny, who's like a mafioso chasing after Lane to get his $2 for 4 weeks of unpaid newspaper deliveries. We get Ricky, the overweight kid across the street, cutting a rug at the school dance, but failing when he attempts to do the snake. You know, that breakdance move where you jump onto your belly and sort of slide across the floor like a snake. So this movie, like I said, it's off the charts in terms of the 1980s scale, because we get breakdancing, we get nuns crossing the road holding a ghetto blaster, we get visible saxophone usage during the date scene where Lane pulls out a saxophone and starts playing that. It's the higher scoring movie on the 80s ometer by far. I reckon it gets about 8 or 9 out of 12. We haven't done that for a while, but I'm telling you, it's off the charts. It's very funny. I laughed out loud quite a lot in this movie. It is a different kind of humour to most American movies. It's a bit closer to Flying High and Naked Gun, although not quite the same as those, because it's almost a surreal movie. It's so absurdist. Anyway, this movie was written and directed by someone called Savage Steve Holland. Yes, Savage is his first name, apparently. Sounds like a professional wrestler to me. But anyway, he was dumped by his girlfriend at age 16 for the ski team captain and attempted suicide by tying an extension cord to a pipe in his garage and then stood on a plastic garbage can which collapsed under his weight, pulled the pipe loose, water went everywhere, and his mother found him half drowned in a garbage can. Now, he started journaling stupid ways to kill yourself that would fail after that experience, and his little diary about that became this movie. Yes, I forgot to mention that there are several suicide attempts in this movie that are all done for comedic effect, such as when Lane jumps off a bridge, lands in a garbage truck, and we hear that line from a person working on the power poles. You know, why are they throwing away a perfectly good white boy, that we heard in the trailer. Now, Siskel and Ebert gave Better Off Dead 2 thumbs down. In general, critics were baffled by the surrealism, the animated interludes, the dark humour about suicide. But this movie did eventually become a cult classic, hitting number 10 on HBO Max's top 10 streamed movies this year in 2025. Now, compared to the other John Cusack movies from 1985, I think The Journey of Natty Gann and The Sure Thing, this is by far and away the best. But John Cusack walked out of the premiere of this movie calling it the worst thing I have ever seen, and for years he would not sign anything related to this film. Somebody would hand him something and he would push it away. It was like a cross in front of a vampire. And that was something said by one of his cast members. Now, one thing that Diane Franklin, who played Monique, the French exchange student, what she observed is that everyone who loves Better Off Dead is genuinely a nice person, because to get the sense of humour, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. And I think that's because we can all see ourselves in some of these stereotyped characters, no matter whether you're the jock or the nerd or whatever it might be. There's a stereotype in this movie to fit you, and you've got to go along and laugh with it, don't you? Anyway, I'm giving this 4.5 stars. It's a Mintox. I really enjoyed it. But now...
I'm driving along and I'm just singing my song. I'm in a news-free zone.
Well, welcome to the News-Free Zone, everybody. It's that time of the podcast where we look back at the news from 1985 so that we don't need to look at the news from 2025. So 40 years ago on this week, the Nintendo Entertainment System launched in New York City as a limited test market. Nintendo promised to buy back unsold inventory, which took a lot of the risk off the retailers. Now, initial reports called the test market a miserable failure, but the NES would go on to sell 34 million units in North America and save the gaming industry after the gaming winter. This week, Intel unveiled the 386 microprocessor at their Santa Clara headquarters. This CPU contained 275,000 transistors. Whoa, that's a lot. And it remained in production until September 2007, which is a long time. This week as well, in 1985, the song Take On Me by a-ha finally hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song had actually come out the previous year in 1984, but the new video clip, once it got heavy rotation on MTV, caused the song to rise up the charts and eventually take out the top position. Also this week in 1985, Reagan delivered a radio address on the United Nations 40th anniversary. So I guess it's the 80th anniversary of the United Nations in 2025. Also, finally, this week in 1985, it was Telethon in Perth. Now, Telethon was also this week in 2025. I watched a little bit of it, and it is quite interesting to do a deep dive into Telethon. So that's what I am going to do for the remainder of this segment. Now, the very first Telethon was held by Milton Berle in 1949, where an NBC executive coined the portmanteau word telethon, portmanteau, which is television plus marathon, telethon, specifically for that event in 1949. But it wasn't until 1966 when Jerry Lewis introduced the Labor Day telethon that was broadcast from New York that the idea of the telethon really took off. Now, that very first Jerry Lewis telethon in 1966 raised $1 million, which was so far above what they expected to raise that Jerry Lewis had to climb a ladder and paint a 7th digit on the 6-digit tote board. Now, Jerry Lewis's telethon ended in 2014, but the Perth telethon started in 1968 and it's still going right the way to this year, 2025. Now, it was inspired directly by Jerry Lewis's success. Now, in 1967, just 1 year after Lewis's first telethon, during a golf game at Lake Karrinyup Country Club, the managing director of Channel 7 in Perth, Jim Crothers, discussed Jerry Lewis's telethon with James Clarkson. He was the CEO of Princess Margaret's Hospital for Children in Perth, and they decided that they would replicate the American model for a telethon to raise money for the Children's Hospital. Now, the very first Perth telethon took place in 1968, establishing it as one of the earliest continuing annual telethons in the world. They haven't skipped a year since 1968, even during COVID. And despite the chaos of their very first broadcast, it was the first time that they opened the TV studio to members of the public. They ran for 36 hours straight, broadcasting everything live to air, and they raised $100,000. Not as good as Jerry Lewis's telethon, but of course he was doing it to the entire population of the United States. And in Australia, in Western Australia, it was only the population of Western Australia, which I imagine was about 750,000 people in 1968. That's just a stab in the dark. Will can check me on that. Now, apparently the son of one of the executives at Channel 7 said it was the first time that he saw his dad cry when his dad realised that they were going to raise more than $100,000. Isn't that great? So, like I said, I said 36 hours. It runs for a continuous 26 hours, typically starting at 7 p.m. on Saturday night and going through to 9 p.m. on Sunday. And it is slightly longer than Jerry Lewis's telethon at its peak, and it has run every year since its inception. And although it originally was just for Princess Margaret Hospital, it now has over 150 beneficiaries. So there you go. Every year they select 2 kids that are chosen to represent the faces of telethon. Now, of course, telethon raises money for sick children, and typically they'll select 2 kids, one from the city and one from the country. And one year, it might have been in 1985, but probably a few years before that, one of the kids was from my primary school. Now, in 2024, telethon raised $83.2 million. With a population of 2.8 million, that's $30 per capita, which is crazy. That makes it easily the highest donating telethon per capita in the world. Jerry Lewis's telethon only raised 20 cents per capita in its most successful year. Now, when you're from Perth's a pretty small city. A lot of our records are per capita records. I remember at one point we had the most number of millionaires per capita and the highest number of restaurants per capita and things like that. Generally, it's just because we're a pretty small, isolated, but still international city. Now, the Perth Telethon gets a lot of international visitors every year, and this was very confusing for me as a kid, because what you would do is you would watch your TV and you'd see all your local TV celebrities and newsreaders on the local shows, and then you'd watch American and British TV shows and movies, and you'd see all these actors and singers and movie stars, and then you'd watch Telethon and you'd see all the local TV celebrities and newsreaders with all of the TV stars from American and British TV shows and movies, and you would just think that this is the entire world. You know, that guy that I saw on the movie must live in my city. And when I'm talking about the international guests, we've had people like Celine Dion, Whitney Houston, Tina Turner, Stevie Wonder, Sammy Davis Jr., Elton John, Harry Connick Jr., Cliff Richard, Julian Lennon, Phyllis Diller, Carrie Fisher, Ernie Wise, Kenny Everett, Bill Oddie, Basil Brush, the Harlem Globetrotters, up to 14 international guests in a single year. And they just spend the 26 hours interacting with just the regular people. And, you know, it really makes them look very down to earth. And I have a lot of fond memories of that. Of course, all the Australian celebrities are there too, like Hugh Jackman and Chris Hemsworth. But in the year 1985, as part of a $47.5 million business deal that would reshape the music industry, the guest of honour was Michael Jackson himself, who turned up in the TV studios as part of the telethon, where he met a lot of celebrities, local TV celebrities, but a lot of the sick kids as well. He went to Princess Margaret Hospital and met the sick kids. He walked the streets of Fremantle and watched some Aboriginal kids playing the didgeridoo. He took selfies with the Western Australian Police. And basically, apart from supporting sick children and donating his white socks to be auctioned off for charity, he was there to purchase 250 Beatles songs from Robert Holmes a Court, who was Channel 7's owner and Perth's first billionaire. He owned ATV Music Publishing and sold it to Michael Jackson in a $47.5 million deal that included as one of its clauses that Michael Jackson would have to fly halfway around the world and attend the telethon in Perth. But of course, this was a very surreal event for everyone in Perth, for pretty much the most famous person in the world to turn up at a local TV studio for our telethon. Now, Holmes Court didn't sell all of the Beatles songs. He kept one for his daughter, Penny Lane. So his daughter, Catherine, that's her song, apparently. So Michael Jackson was quite savvy. In fact, it was Paul McCartney who suggested that he invest in songs, just not knowing that Michael Jackson would buy the Beatles back catalogue. But when the catalogue was sold in 2016, it went to Sony Music for $750 million. So that's quite a good investment, isn't it? What's that, a 30 times return? So there you go. That was the big news. Molly Meldrum couldn't believe it when they phoned him up and asked him to interview Michael Jackson on Channel 7 in Perth. He thought it was a hoax. Molly Meldrum, of course, being Australia's music maven. Now, what else? I think that's pretty much everything that I've got to see. Michael Jackson couldn't perform because of contractual obligations, but he did appear and get interviewed and received a red Akubra hat from Fat Cat, the Channel 7 Perth mascot. And I think that's pretty much everything that to be said about that. So there you go. This was the week of telethon and Michael Jackson's visit in 1985. But right now, don't forget to rewind.